At dusk, the first body drifted past, its limbs wrapped in tattered, stained cloth. The black water reflected the weak amber glow of the canal lamps, and the buildings leaned toward each other like conspirators, windows broken, walls rotted. I was already in the gondola when I saw him. Motionless at the bow, dressed like a plague doctor, the long coat heavy and gloves slick with damp. He didn't row, yet the boat moved silently forward. I tried to speak, but my throat was dry. Another body brushed the side of the gondola with a wet thud. One moment I had been asleep, the next I was here, engulfed in the smell of rot and the weight of impossibility. The gondola drifted through the canal, nudging aside bodies floating aimlessly. Some were wrapped tightly in cloth, their forms preserved like macabre dolls. Others were naked, their skin pale and bloated, mouths frozen mid-scream. Faces twisted in silent agony stared up at me. One of them opened its eyes. I froze. The face was gray and swollen, framed by hair floating in the water like strands of dark seaweed. Its gaze locked onto mine with impossible clarity. The lips trembled, and a dry, rasping sound emerged from somewhere beneath the water, not carried by air, but by bone, by wood, by the cold itself. The effect was immediate. My stomach lurched, and I scrambled backward in the gondola, nearly toppling into the canal. The figure remained, suspended in the water, eyes unblinking. It was impossible, and yet undeniably there. Every instinct in me screamed to wake up, to shake off the dreamlike horror, but nothing worked. My body felt heavy, weighed down by the water and the fog that pressed in from every side. The canal widened slightly, and the fog grew thicker, curling around the buildings and lamps, bending the light into long, ghostly fingers. Bells tolled somewhere in the distance, slow and hollow. The sound didn't come from a tower or belfry, but seemed to echo from beneath the water itself. I could feel it in my chest, vibrating through me in uneven pulses. Ahead, the canal opened into a square flooded with black water. Statues stood waist-deep in the liquid, their marble faces streaked with black stains. More bodies clustered here, tangled together like dolls discarded after some careless play. The gondola slid into the center, silent, the water almost unnaturally still. On a wooden platform in the middle of the square stood 3 figures. Their bodies were burned black, charred beyond recognition, yet upright, as if some cruel force refused to let them collapse. Their skulls tilted toward the sky, empty eye sockets staring into nothing. My chest tightened as I realized the enormity of what I was witnessing. The plague doctor stepped forward onto the platform, his boots making no sound against the soaked wood. He reached into his coat and withdrew a long, thin silver needle. The first body convulsed as the needle pierced its chest. The sound was not of a scream but a rasping, cracking noise, the breaking of dried wood rather than flesh. Then, silence. The body slumped, turning to ash that drifted into the water. The second followed, and then the third. It moved differently, its head turned toward me, empty sockets glowing faintly red. A whisperless accusation lingered in the air. The ferryman had come for me. The water around the gondola churned violently. Hands, pale, swollen, waterlogged, emerged from beneath, gripping the sides of the boat. Hundreds of them, the floating bodies, now upright, began to hum a low, rhythmic sound. The chant resonated through the water, through the wood, through my own bones. Panic gripped me. My hands clutched the edges of the gondola as the water began to rise. The reflections in the black water confused me. I could see my apartment, the bed I had slept in, the blankets still rumpled from the night before. There, in the reflection, lay my body. Gray, still, motionless. Paramedics moved around it in a muted scene, voices distant and underwater. "He's been gone for hours," one said. "Must have happened in his sleep," the other replied. My stomach twisted as I realized the impossibility. The reflection was real, and yet I was here, alive in the gondola, frozen in a nightmare that refused to release me. The gondola scraped against stone as the water reached my chest. Ahead, a wall rose impossibly high, smooth, featureless. The plague doctor stepped onto the water as if it were solid ground, waiting. The reflections faded, leaving only darkness beneath me. The city beyond the wall felt suspended in memory and death, rotting, yet strangely intact. The gondola disappeared, swallowed by the water, leaving only stone and fog. I was left alone, shivering and soaked, the cold seeping through every layer of clothing. The canal behind me drained, revealing bodies now stranded on the stones, motionless, their eyes staring at an empty sky. The air was thick, almost viscous, pressing in against my chest. For a long moment I could only breathe shallowly, trying to process the impossible. Then came the sound, a knock, faint at first, almost polite. It echoed from the distance, carried on the water, and yet I felt it inside my skull. My apartment. Somewhere in the real world, a door was being opened. I could hear muffled voices, paramedics, again checking the body, noting that it had been hours since I had moved. My chest tightened. The boundary between this place and that reality had thinned, and the pressure of the unknown weighed on me. I realized slowly, with a creeping sense of dread, that this was not punishment. It was memory. The city, drowned in its own forgetting, held not only bodies, but the echoes of decisions, of lives left incomplete, of moments ignored. The plague doctor was no harbinger of death in the traditional sense. He was a guide, a collector of the spaces in between, the pauses, the moments that slipped unnoticed. I tried to move, but the cold held me in place. My mind replayed the night before sleep, the subtle pressure in my chest, the hesitation to call for help, the quiet decision to ignore the warning signs. And in that moment, I understood. The gondola, the bodies, the water, they were a reflection of that choice. Of all the times I had ignored the small alarms of life, letting fear or stubbornness take precedence over caution. The water receded fully, leaving the square drained, the bodies lying still. The plague doctor remained, silent and still. His presence was a constant weight, a reminder that the world I had left behind, my apartment, my bed, the paramedics, was not gone. It existed alongside this city of memory, a mirror of what could have been, what almost was. I stepped forward, chest heaving, shivering, trying to reconcile what I had seen. The city felt empty yet alive, every shadow and reflection holding fragments of the past. I could hear the faintest whispers, like regrets brushing the stone walls, unfinished sentences, lost opportunities, small mercies never given. My own name rose in that current, indistinct but unmistakable, calling me to recognize the fragility of the life I had almost forsaken. Time seemed to stretch, suspended between the moments of heartbeats. The plague doctor remained, unmoving, as if waiting for something I could not yet name. I realized then that this place, terrifying as it was not about horror for its own sake. It was about attention, about recognition, about understanding the spaces where life had slipped past unnoticed. Eventually, the fog began to lift. The faint outlines of streets appeared, buildings standing upright and solid. The lamps glowed more steadily now, casting a muted amber warmth across the stone. The rot that had permeated the walls, the water, even the air, began to dissipate. The city, though still strange, became more familiar, less hostile. The plague doctor did not speak. His mask remained fixed, lenses reflecting only the dim light. And then, almost imperceptibly, the first hints of reality reasserted themselves. The knock I had heard earlier faded, the reflection of my apartment receding from the water. The line between that nightmarish canal and the world I had come from began to harden again. I stood alone in the drained square, drenched, shivering, uncertain of what had happened. The bodies were gone, dissolved into mist, leaving no trace of the horrors I had witnessed. The gondola was gone. The water had vanished. Only the stone and fog remained. I walked through the empty streets, the city no longer threatening. The memory of the crossing lingered, pressing on every quiet moment. I never saw the plague doctor again, whether real or a guide of consequence. I knew he would always wait in the quiet moments, silently guiding the unwilling through the waters of memory and ending. And somewhere, in another world, another apartment, another life, a door would creak open, a knock would echo, a heart would pause.